Comethazine. Now, at this point, you probably already figured I was going to talk about him, considering I did a video on Smoke Perp. They're both signed to the same label and have a very similar story when it comes to their career. Although, unlike Smoke Perp, who was basically only known for being Lil Pump's sidekick, Comethazine had a lot more of a defined persona, with him being a crazy, reckless, insane person, basically the demon of SoundCloud. But as time went on, his persona would start to fade away, considering he was never really the person that he spoke about in his music, and that's not too uncommon for people in the SoundCloud wave. Lil Pump was a character, Icy Narco was a character, 6ix9ine was a character, but the difference being is that Comethazine really believed that he was the guy that he was talking about in his music, and once that started to fade away and break down, as well as his ego getting too inflated, his career started to go downhill as well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because before we can talk about his fall off, we got to talk about his rise to fame, his career, his childhood, and everything else that goes into the story of Comethazine. So for once, it's a little bit complicated to say what his actual birth name is, because apparently it's Frank Childerus, but he would later change it to Jameer Belquias. I'm not sure if this is actually true or another gimmick that he was playing during the time that he was making music, but either way, apparently he's named after some sort of famous painter, and he changed his name because he wanted to stick out more. Anyways, he was born July 6, 1998 in St. Louis, Illinois, also known as the murder capital of America. Now, you're probably thinking being born in a place like that, he would grow up to become a ruthless killer, but Comethazine really wasn't like that as a kid. He was your average hyperactive kid that couldn't sit still, couldn't pay attention when he was in class, and was later diagnosed with ADHD, although he never took the medication for it because he doesn't really believe that that's an actual mental disorder, so he would instead start sipping lean, or at least that's what he said. I'm not sure if it's actually true, because if you really look at what Comethazine was doing around this time, he was actually trying out to be on the Disney Channel.
I'm going to get a magazine. I can't wait to open up that magazine. Why?
This video of his audition has been floating around the internet for the past couple years, and I never actually thought it was real, but apparently it is, and he actually wanted to be on TV during his younger years. And it's not really a big deal, because after all, what kid doesn't want to be on the Disney Channel, but it definitely would go on to hurt his persona later on, but let's save that for later. Right now, he was sipping NyQuil. Yeah, that's right, apparently the first time he ever got grape juice, it was actually NyQuil and not the real stuff, and then after that, he would somehow get his hands on the actual stuff, which is like $300, so this story really doesn't make sense, but that's how he got his name. He was really hyperactive and couldn't sit still, so his friends would give him the nickname Coke, and then later on he would combine that with his favorite drink, making the name Comethazine. But even though he was super hyperactive, he never really liked to go outside because there was too much violence, so he would spend most of his time in his crib, and during that time he had to find something to do. And he decided to start rapping, being heavily influenced by people like Eminem, 50 Cent, and Joey Badass, at first making more lyrical rap before then changing into a more ignorant sound. And his equipment at first definitely wasn't anything special. It was a MacBook Pro that he got for the prior Christmas, as well as a $200 USB microphone, but with those two things, he was finally able to start making music and putting it out into the world. And the reason he wanted to pursue music so bad is because it really pissed his mom off, and he wanted to get good at something that she really didn't like. And on top of that, he also had a childhood friend named Philip who wanted to start rapping as well, and the two of them had plans to start up a group that would take over the entire mainstream, but it never ended up happening because unfortunately, Philip would end up passing away. During this time, Comethazine's grades would slip so badly that he actually ended up dropping out of school, with him wanting to stay home full time and make music, but his mother told him that if he didn't get his education, she was going to kick him out of the house and he was going to be homeless, so he had no choice but to start attending night school. Now this really helped Comethazine out because night school was a lot shorter than normal school, only being about 4 hours, so basically he would sleep all day, go to school for a couple hours, and then after that write raps and record lyrics. During this time he would discover the upcoming SoundCloud wave, which at this point in 2017 was already basically mainstream, and he really wanted to be a part of it as well. He really looked up to people like XXXTentacion, Smoke Perp, and especially Lil Pump, because I feel like he took most of his persona from Pump with his whole obsession with Demi Lovato, pretty similar to Lil Pump being obsessed with iCarly, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So at this point he would drop his first ever mixtape on the platform called Aloe Vera, which was basically only 3 songs, and they weren't very good and didn't do that many numbers either. Comethazine was basically fighting a losing battle with so many different people already on SoundCloud making music. It was hard for him to get his stuff into the algorithm and actually push numbers, and on top of that he was also taking beats that weren't really his, was, so his SoundCloud would eventually get taken down. At this point, it's kind of uncertain if he actually ended up making another SoundCloud or not. I think that he did because a lot of people said he jumped right onto Elevator after this point, but if you know anything about that channel, you have to pay to get on there, so he must have been making money from somewhere, and if it wasn't SoundCloud, I'm not really sure where. At some point during 2016, he would drop another project called Newport City, which once again wasn't anything special, but luckily for him, after this, he would drop his breakthrough track called I Might Cop a Jag, which ended up getting a video on Elevator a couple months later. Like I said, I'm not really sure how this went down because he must have had some money to get on the channel, but either way, the visuals were cool, the video was great, and immediately after that, he started doing numbers in the underground scene. It was looking like the next upcoming SoundCloud rapper that would blow up. Although he was still on the level of people like Iron Little Gut, Egovert, he wasn't really on that pump, perp, big time level yet. After that, he would continue to drop tracks on SoundCloud, including Bands, which would become one of his biggest songs of all time, but for now, it only got about 70,000 plays, which isn't bad, but definitely not breaking through into the mainstream levels. After that, he would then drop a song called Bosky Anthem on the Perfect Plug YouTube channel, which is kind of like Elevator, except for they don't post music videos, they really only post songs. And then he would drop a snippet for his track called Piped Up, which funnily enough actually started a little bit of drama with another rapper called O Trapstar. They were basically both coming up around the same time. Although Comethazine was definitely bigger at the time, O Trapstar had more connections, being the cousin of Lil Pump and being around Little Ominous, and he ended up actually taking the lyrics from Piped Up and putting it on his own hit track called Choppa. But since Comethazine took so long to drop the track, apparently because his label was making him sit on it, the Choppa track would actually come out about a week before Piped Up, meaning that it got most of the attention at the time, although it would later come out that O Trapstar stole the lyrics from Piped Up, which you would think would be a bad thing, but it seems like O Trapstar did this through an honest mistake, with him going into the studio and freestyling Choppa, not realizing that he had taken it from something that he heard earlier on in the day. I mean, don't get me wrong, Comethazine was definitely upset about this and would call him out a couple times. He said he liked the track, but he wasn't happy that he stole the swag, and then later on, O Trapstar would get called out on a No Jumper live stream, but he really didn't have too much to say, and in the long run, both tracks got more attention because of the drama, so they both kind of won out in the end. But anyways, all of that happened in early 2018. I want to get back to late 2017 because at this point, Comethazine was definitely bubbling in the underground, and everybody was looking at him as somebody that was going to get signed pretty soon, which you'd think would make him happy, but he was actually pretty depressed because his best friend Philip ended up dying in a drive-by shooting right around this time, leading him to want to quit rap music once and for all and picking up a job as a pizza delivery man. So that's basically the story of Comethazine, a sad tale of a rapper who could have made it big, but unfortunately all the gun violence and everything circulating around him led him to want to stop making music and becoming a pizza man, and to this very day that's still where he remains, making pizza and thinking about what could have been. Now of course I'm just kidding because he actually ended up getting fired from that job, and then immediately after that he would pick up another job as a mechanic, or if you want to be more technical, a lube tech, which is basically somebody who, I don't know, lubricates cars I think. And apparently he really liked this job and had plans to stay there, but after he got the call from Alamo Records saying they wanted to sign him to a big time record deal, he had no choice but to quit the job and immediately fly out to LA to sign a deal. Now as you already know, Alamo Records is definitely not the best record company to sign with. They were pretty new at the time and they already had Smoke Perp, who they were pretty heavily mismanaging, but Comethazine was like 19 years old at this point and definitely wasn't looking at the fine print of the deal, and all he wanted to do was become a big time rapper, get a bunch of money, put some ice on his wrist, and hopefully become the next Lil Pump. So he ended up signing the deal and they immediately got to work blowing him up. He would immediately drop a video on Worldstar for his track Screw Me in My Jag, which ended up getting about 75,000 plays, which wasn't too bad, but considering how much the label paid him at this point, they probably wanted him to have bigger numbers, and this is where something really weird ended up happening. So bear with me here because I gotta talk about another rapper who was blowing up in the SoundCloud scene called YBN Demir. So basically this guy had a track called Rubbing Off the Paint, which got really big on SoundCloud before then getting a video on Worldstar, and then immediately after that he dropped his second big hit called Bounce Out With It, which also got a Lyrical Lemonade video. But during this point in his career, he was big enough that he wanted to step away from SoundCloud, only posting music on Spotify as well as YouTube, and because of that, it left a market open on SoundCloud for somebody to repost a track and reap all the rewards for it, and that person was either Comethazine, a fan of Comethazine, or somebody from the label, because they ended up running that track up to about 1 million plays before they would then change the file over to Bands by Comethazine, making it look like the track got 1 million plays on its own. Because if you didn't know, on SoundCloud you can post a track and then change the file later on in case you want to remaster it or do something to it, and because of that they're able to pull a trick, and just like that, Comethazine was on top of the SoundCloud charts, leading everybody to talk about him and making him seem like a lot bigger of a rapper than he actually was at the time. After that, he would then drop 3 music videos on No Jumper called Death Wish, Piped Up, and Shoot Me Piped Up in particular getting bigger numbers because of the situation that I spoke on earlier with Oak Trapstar. He would then go on to do an exposed video on No Jumper, where he would for some reason wear a sketcher on his head the entire time, and at this point you can see that Comethazine was really getting propped up on antics. He was making his way into the news for the things that he was doing, not the music that he was making, and on top of that, a lot of his fans had complaints about his music, saying it was too generic and comparing him to people like TK, Smoke Perp, and of course YBN Namir, which would lead Comethazine to lash out on them on several occasions, starting to form a rift between him and his own fan base, and at the same time he was being looked at as a generic SoundCloud rapper who really couldn't bring anything new to the table. But it's not like he was going to fall off altogether, because he was still doing good numbers and would eventually get a couple tracks that were even bigger than everything he was doing at the time, including bands actually getting a music video on Lyrical Lemonade. That video ended up doing numbers and pushing the track even farther before it then got a remix by Rich the Kid, which of course gave it a whole nother life. He would then go on to drop his first official mixtape through the label called Bosky, which had features from Ugly God, Lil Yachty, and DJ Mustard, and at this point you could tell that Comethazine was definitely willing to work with other artists, talking about how he wanted to do a feature with XXXTentacion, Smoke Perp because they're on the same label, and he even talked about working with Lil Pump, but unfortunately none of these ended up coming true. And from this point onward, we never really seen Comethazine working with other artists again. There were a couple remixes of his older tracks as the years went on, but they were most likely created by his label and didn't actually have any creative control or input from him, because Comethazine had a really big problem with working with other artists past Bosky 1. Nobody's really sure why he decided to change his stance on features so abruptly, but it's most likely due to the fact that his ego was growing at a massive rate and he felt like nobody could get on a track with him and match the same energy that he was putting out. But either way, after the drop of that project, he would get an official No Jumper interview before then dropping his biggest track to date called Walk, getting a music video on Lyrical Lemonade as well. Now this point is definitely going to be my own opinion, but I always felt like this music video was incredibly corny, and after that I never really had much interest in checking out any more Comethazine's music. In the latter half of 2018, a lot of people were expecting him to get on the XXL freshman list, which unfortunately didn't happen until the following year, which a lot of people saw as too little too late. His music output also slowed down a lot during this time, which wasn't a good idea considering that he was still on the come up and that a lot of people still needed to see his face if they were going to get attached to him and want to listen to more music. He would do a Montreality interview, which definitely is a staple of almost every SoundCloud rapper, but besides that, he basically quietly ended 2018 without dropping anything else big. But as soon as 2019 started off, he ended up putting out his next mixtape called Bosky 2, which once again didn't have any features on it, so that definitely didn't help it out, but at the same time, it seems like fans were pretty happy with it and were waiting to see what he was going to do next, with him heading on a tour across America and Canada in the following months, which seemed to do pretty well. It seemed like he packed out almost every show that he did, but I don't think they were stadiums by any means, probably just warehouses and smaller venues. You also have to keep in mind the state of things in 2019 when it came to SoundCloud rap. 6ix9ine had already gone to jail, X had already passed away. We were getting new rappers like Blueface as well as Icy Narco, people like that who a lot of people saw as corny. And with such a big gap between Walk on Lyrical Lemonade and Bosky 2, it was almost like the label had to reintroduce Comethazine to the world, and by 2019, a lot of people were already very sick of the Little Pump wannabes and didn't really want to listen to anything that he was putting out. He would finally get on the XXL freshman list in 2019, but like I said previously, it was too little too late, and then after that he went quiet again until he ended up dropping Bosky 3 or Bosky 3.5, which once again had no features and really wasn't getting any motion because at this point people were kind of tired of him. Rolling into 2020, things only got worse because of course the pandemic ended up happening, and after that TikTok was on the rise, SoundCloud was on the way out, and basically the entire game changed. Like generic 2018 flow wasn't going to do the job anymore, and if you wanted to be popular now, you had to make a very catchy hook that could get popular on TikTok and then propel the rest of your music into stardom, which Comethazine was definitely in no position to do. He was still making the same generic music, still fighting with his fans, and it seems like his label was trying to shelf him at this point, with him actually coming out against them, saying that they wouldn't let him drop music. And of course, his money was also in trouble because he couldn't play shows. He did end up dropping 2 albums during this time called Pandemic and Bosky 4. Bosky 4 ended up having no features and falling on deaf ears, and Pandemic actually made people pretty upset for naming his album that because they felt like he was trying to profit off of something that was very serious with a lot of people passing away at the time. With him actually getting so mad at a fan at this point that he actually threatened to grape her, yeah, it actually got to that level, and that's definitely not a good move to make optically. Dude's really out here stealing Rejected Raina's entire flow, I mean, come on, man. Side joke for all the Twisted World OGs, you know what I'm talking about. In 2021, he dropped his self-titled album, which ended up having no features once again, and for some reason this ended up causing problems with Sos Mula. He was also working on an album around the time, saying that it had no features, and for some reason that made Comethazine really mad, calling Sos Mula 6ix9ine's little brother, and if you know anything about City Morgue and 6ix9ine, they really don't like the guy. Sos Mula would then respond in an Instagram live, basically calling out Comethazine for being a Disney boy. I told you that would come back later, saying that if he popped out in New York, he was going to beat his butt, and then after that, ended up dropping a diss track called Bosky.
Hey, you know what the funny thing about this whole shit is? I don't be starring with nobody. I be minding my business. I be minding my business, my niggas always on my dick. Not one of these niggas, bro. I smack the fuck out Comethazine. Like he said, like son is really a peasant. Like I feel like I'm bullying him. I feel like I'm bullying him. You know what I'm saying? Cause son is really a little boy. Like nigga's a twig. Like imagine me punching Comethazine. Like imagine, bro. I don't give a fuck. Screen record this shit. Duh. Screen recorded. Duh. That's what it's for. Duh. Send that shit to that nigga. I don't give a fuck. Nigga, send this shit to his mother. Matter of fact, give me his mom's gram so I can send it to her. Like, I look crazy beefing with that nigga. I'm picking on him. I'm bullying him. You know what I'm saying? Niggas just smack the shit out that little nigga, bro. Niggas be letting this rap shit get to their head. And then niggas start believing they raps. Niggas start believing their own rhymes. Niggas be letting this rap shit get to their head. Niggas start rapping all this gangster shit. Little by little, you eventually start becoming it because you start believing your own lie. So then you fool yourself and then you really think you this. Comethazine is a peasant. He's a pussy, bro. Little army boy. That nigga was in the army before rap. Why you ain't go to the service, nigga? Why you ain't go serve your country? F out of here, nigga.
And I have to say, it's really weird that Comethazine ended up calling Sos Mula 6ix9ine's little brother, because Comethazine was also clout chasing him by dropping a bar on his track Find Him, which ended up going viral online, with him actually doing a Genius interview for the track where he would explain that he was intentionally dissing 6ix9ine, and then the clip of that ended up going viral on TikTok.
69 niggas and all of them rats. Niggas think I'm dissing 6ix9ine. Definitely was, though.
So it seems like he was able to capture the algorithm at least one more time before he faded away. But by 2022, it seemed like the Comethazine story was pretty well over. He ended up dropping Bosky 5, once again no features and nobody really cared about it, and then after that, he completely disappeared. He left his Instagram behind, he stopped posting music, and he really pissed his fans off, but after all, they had already been at war for a couple years at this point, so they had been pissed off, and he remained gone for about 2 years' time, with everybody wondering where he went, until he randomly appeared again in 2024, posting a video of him playing guitar, and then the internet once again went wild. And when I say that, I mean minorly. Some people took notice, there was a couple videos made about him, but for the most part, it kind of came off like he was trying to do another publicity stunt. And while people talked about it for a couple months, at this point in late 2024, nobody's really talking about it anymore. But that doesn't mean he can't make a comeback, maybe in a different genre. He might be able to get a whole new fan base that actually respects the music that he's making, and he can be a lot more creative with what he's putting out and not be bound by a label, because at this point, I think he's finally done with Alamo. To finally answer the question that I asked at the start of this video, if you're wondering why Comethazine disappeared in 2022, I think it's pretty obvious. The dude was basically a Build-A-Bear SoundCloud rapper. You see, he came so late in the game in the latter half of 2017 after so many other rappers had already popped off, basically stalled throughout 2018, getting some big breaks but not really hitting it in the mainstream. And that's basically because they ran him through all the paces of your average SoundCloud rapper, a No Jumper interview, videos on Worldstar, a Lyrical Lemonade video, which definitely gave him the appearance of being a big-time rapper, but there was no substance behind it. He basically just kept putting out the same old tired music over and over again, and with no collaborations or anything to prop it up, and with all the antics that he was pulling being very generic and not really all that interesting, basically all he did was talk about how much he wanted to get with Demi Lovato, which was basically lifted from Lil Pump, who wanted to get with iCarly, and Lil Pump also stole it from another rapper named Stitches, who wanted to get with Miley Cyrus. So basically what I'm saying is that Lil Xan is the Giga Chad in this situation. He actually managed to shack up with the Disney star being Noah Cyrus, so all these guys talking about it never really really got to do it, but Lil Xan really did, which makes him the best SoundCloud rapper of all time. Okay, but for real, you basically get the point. Comethazine was just another SoundCloud rapper who made his way into the scene. The label tried to blow him up and make him look like he was important, but after a while, it got tired, the fans gave up, his ego got too big, and he decided to step away. Which was actually a pretty good idea for him to step away when he was already starting to fall off and not trying to cling to relevance, doing corny stunts to try to get attention back on him. If he did that, he might have ended up like Famous Dex, Smoke Perp, Lil Pump, or basically anyone else who can't accept that they've fallen off. So yeah, with all that said, that's basically the story of Comethazine. What do you think about it? Do you think that he was ever meant for greatness, or do you think that the label just put him in a position for him to become a SoundCloud rapper, but he couldn't back it up? Do you still like the music? Do you think it's tired and corny? Let me know. Let me know everything in the comments below, and also leave a knife emoji down there while you're there because it's Knife Gang, you already know that. Subscribe to the channel because I'm trying to get to 16K. I'm not sure if we'll be there by the time this video comes out, but either way, we're making pretty good progress, and I got a second channel where I cover more drama-centric stuff, so if you want to check that out as well, be my guest. But now that I said all that, see you in the next one. Peace.
Racism, hella experiences with that shit. Overseas mainly though. In Sweden,